Well, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you again for joining, and thank you, Rochelle, for the introduction. Just by the fact that you schedule time to be here, that you logged in today, you are indeed change agents, and change starts here with you today. So I'd like to dig into talking about change, or disruption as we're calling it, and your role in it. Today you're going to get to discover the 3 secrets that all great disruptors have in common. Root has done this research, and we have found that if companies have been successful in disruption, these 3 things that we're going to talk about today have all been core to that disruptive change that they've made. I'm Gary Magenta. I'm with Root, and I've been with Root for 17 years. I am the Chief Change Architect at Root, which means I help organizations think about the possibilities in the future, the disruptions they want to make, and go on that journey from the current state to the future state. And as part of my job, I get to do a lot of speaking to live audiences about change, and I've had the opportunity to do some research and write in a couple of areas. The Unbossy Boss is my book on managers and how they help engage the front line in change. And my second book, 720 Haircuts, is a book on how to deliver a differentiated customer experience. And for so many companies that are looking to disrupt, the customer is at the heart of that disruption, and delivering them a unique customer experience is key. And just this next week, I will be starting a series in partnership with CBS called The Pot Stirrer, where we will be taking guests from the world's leading companies and understanding what they're doing to disrupt their marketplace. So more about that to come. I have a promise for you today, along with my partner, Rochelle, who you heard from already. We have a couple of promises. Rochelle, why don't we just step back a moment and let you introduce yourself and your role before I tell them what we're going to promise them.
Okay, yes. So I wanted to let everybody know that Gary is used to speaking in front of live audiences, and you are a live audience. You just happen to be in a virtual environment today. So one of the things that we're going to do to make sure that he is reacting and responding to you and that you're part of this conversation is use the chat in WebEx. So I will be serving as the chat host, and I'm going to invite you to chat at any time to all participants, and then I will be summarizing and pointing out some of the trends that you guys are mentioning, and at appropriate times letting Gary know what that is. So please plan to be at your computers and interact with us today. It's going to be so much fun because we've planned for that.
Thank you, Rochelle. And Rochelle is the world's greatest web host. She will keep you engaged and active in it. So, Rochelle, I'm happy to have you with us today. Thank you. So we've got a promise for you. At the end of our time together today, you're going to understand the secret formula that all successful disruptors share. But equally, if not more important, we're going to give you a takeaway that will help you determine if your organization has what it takes to be a disruptor. It's great to dream about it, but you have to take some action if you want to disrupt in the marketplace. So let's kick this off right away and find out for you, how many of you feel like right now business growth, business progress in general is going really well? For how many of you is this working out? Do you feel business is really good?
Yep, it's business booming. Let us know. So we've got a couple of ways that you can respond. Do you see a green check under your name in the participant panel? You can use that. Kelly found it earlier. Use the green check to give us a yes, or go ahead and use the chat and chat. How are you feeling? Is business booming? Are we doing good? How are we today? Okay, we're working on it, Gary. Nelson says yes. Thumbs up. Kelly, yes. Good. Jessica, it's going well. It's going well. Anybody feel differently? You've got a red X, or you can say no. We're among friends today. We're going to have some vulnerability and be pretty honest, so feel free.
So looks like we have a lot of people who say business growth is good.
It's good.
So it's great. You're on the business growth highway, and you're singing along, you're sailing along, things are going great, and that's happened for a lot of businesses. Let's think about the heydays of Borders and Blockbuster and Kodak, and organizations who also would have put thumbs up in their heyday of saying growth is exactly where we want it to be, but all of a sudden, you're driving down business growth highway, and the ground underneath you starts to crumble. The buildings on either side of you are caving in. What is that? What's happening? Well, for many businesses who feel like they're in their heyday and they're doing a great job, this eventually happens. And it's what we call disruption. So let me just start here by asking a question. What does disruptor or disruption mean to you? What's the definition of disruptor?
Yeah, when you guys see that word, what do you think? Let us know in the chat. What is a disruptor? What is disruption? Go ahead and put in. Gretchen has found the chat. If you guys would make sure that you send to all participants so that we can all see it. We're being very open. Tell us in the chat, what is a disruptor? What comes to mind when you hear Gary say that word? Okay, Cindy's coming in. Okay, we're coming in, Gary. I think we're starting to roll. We've got a cute little group with us today. Okay, disruption is any change. It could be chaos, something that changes a routine. It can be internal or external. It could be a rejection of the status quo, Gary. Oh, my goodness.
Oh, wow.
Something changes in the landscape. I love that too. Something changes in the landscape. Disruption brings to mind change agent. That's what Amy thinks when she hears that word. Disruption is something that interrupts the norm. It's a different way of thinking. This is Mackenzie, and I think we're on to something here.
So disruption is changing the norm for sure. And there are people out there that are deliberately looking to change that norm, Mackenzie, if I use that definition. And they're called disruptors. So we went out and we said, well, okay, if these disruptors are causing the business growth highway to fall away underneath us, what are those disruptors doing? But how can we define disruptor? Mm-hmm. So we looked for some definitions, and I found this one first. It says, creates a new, be very specific with that word, a new market and value network, and eventually disrupts an existing market and value network, displacing established market-leading firms, products, and alliances. And Rochelle, I sat with this description, this definition. I thought, well, why does it have to be a new market? Why does it have to disrupt existing? And most importantly, why are we displacing established market-leading firms? I mean, why are they being displaced? I already mentioned a few like Borders and Blockbuster and Kodak. Why did they get displaced? Don't they have the resources? Don't they have the people? Don't they have the ability to research and invest and morph and pivot? Didn't make any sense to me. This definition to me said disruption or disruptors are only new entrance into the marketplace, and that didn't settle well with me. So I went and continued, and I went to my old friend Merriam-Webster, and I said, Merriam, what do you think? And he had a couple of definitions, and I really like this one that's highlighted in yellow. It says a company, doesn't say new, doesn't say old, it says a company that changes the traditional way an industry operates, meaning the industry you're in may be a really good one, let's just shake it up a little, especially in new and effective ways. So a company that changes the traditional way an industry operates, especially in new and different ways. Awesome. I can work with that because to me, this definition is inclusive. So my question to this group is, if this allows for existing companies, is that good news for you? I mean, how long has your company been around? How many people here have been in companies that are 20 years old or 50 years old or even 100 years old? Can you raise your hand or give us a yes?
Our hand. Yeah, if you're with an established company, one that's been around for a while, just give us a green check or say something in the chat. How many of us are not with a new company? This company's been around, and that's not typically, Gary, what we may have thought of before, but there's a chance for us, right? Yes. Oh, my goodness, a lot of us, many of us. Yeah, Zach and Tanya and Sarah and Saba. Yep, Mackenzie and Kelly and Julie. Yeah. Oh, Gary.
Rhetorical
We're with some
question.
Established companies. Yeah.
This is I think a rhetorical question. Which definition works for you? Do you have to be a new business, or would you like your existing business to be able to disrupt? Let's go for an example here. Rochelle, I'm going to call an audible and ask for a little interaction here when we didn't plan for it.
Okay.
How many people here, just by raise of hands, raise your hands yes if you think Sears is a disruptor?
Okay, so you've got a little raised hand on your icon. It's a little hand, raised hand icon. Raise your hand. Okay, we might should have posed the question differently because it looks like we're not getting any action, but what we're getting is disagreement. Yeah, nobody sees Sears. Yep. Nope.
Yeah, that's
we're not
really
feeling
interesting. You're not feeling it. Huh.
Nope.
Well, I'm going to be very, very unpopular then, because Sears is the great disruptor, absolutely, of 1896.
That may be what Neil was thinking when he raised his hand. We got one.
Yes.
Yes.
Very good, Neil. So in 1896, they were sort of a big deal, and I'm going to save this chat question because here's what happened. They came in and they said, Rochelle, and everybody that's joining us, we're going to have the largest assortment of products available through mail order catalog. Oh, my goodness, a catalog. And it's the largest assortment of products anywhere. We're going to deliver them to your front door. We're going to allow, as a matter of fact, we'll be the first to allow for returns of items with no questions asked, and we're going to give you a rewards program. The more you order from the Sears catalog, the more free stuff you can get. That's pretty darn disruptive in 1896, right? So let's just fast forward to 1996. What did Amazon say? We're going to have the largest assortment of products available online, the modern day catalog. They're going to deliver it to your front door. They're going to allow for returns with no questions asked. And oh my goodness, we have this reward program called Prime Membership. In fact, Amazon has perfected Sears innovations. So my question to this group, Rochelle, is why isn't Sears Amazon?
Yep.
Why isn't Sears Amazon?
Yeah, why didn't they evolve to Amazon? Let us know in the chat.
Why didn't they evolve?
Okay.
Tell us.
Innovation has come up twice. Yep, right away. First, right out of the box, we've got Gene and Corey saying innovation, innovation. Anybody else have something to say about back in the day, 100 years ago? Okay, yep. They didn't shift. That's a beautiful word. Evolve. That's a beautiful word.
You guys are awesome. I'm so happy that we have such local participants.
Yeah.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah. Yep.
So we did the research on this. The Root research team actually found it's documented. There are three things. And you're right. Every one of your chat responses is right on the money. I want to add a little color and flavor to it. Denial. Denial was intense, a refusal to admit the need to change. Everything's fine. We don't need to do anything different. We're Sears. Insularity. Leaders were not willing to hear bad news. In fact, the saying goes, and it's documented, is bad news didn't reach the 50th floor. Sorry, it's actually the bad news didn't go past the 49th floor, and I gave it away, of course, because the leaders were on the 50th floor. Tall building.
Yep.
Right? And then this final one, which is just really discouraging and upsetting, there's paralysis, because they were still a big machine at one point. They did see the trends. They became very apparent, but they were paralyzed. They could not jump on the bandwagon. As a matter of fact, they jumped on 0 bandwagons. Mm-hmm. So this idea of not shifting, not innovating, absolutely. And that stemmed from a denial to admit they needed to change, leaders guarding themselves from bad news, and paralysis once they really did see, once they were really confronted with what those changes needed to be. And so we look at this and we say, okay, well, change is important. Innovation, as you said, is important. Let's just look at that over time. You know, what I hear a lot, Rochelle, is, well, you know, change is a constant. And I have to tell you, my ears are just numb to those words, change is a constant. Of course, change is a constant.
Yep.
It is the pace of change, it is the speed of change that we need to be acutely aware of, that we have to add to this mix. And that's evolving as we speak. There's a newness, a freshness to that, because it's changing quickly. The pace of change is changing quickly, interestingly enough. So let's go all the way back. Let's go all the way back, and we've got this sort of caveman, and he invents all kinds of neat stuff. He's a disruptor. He invents or discovers fire and how to use it, and creates the wheel. Pretty cool stuff, Rochelle, wouldn't you say?
Oh, yeah. We needed that.
We needed that. And this wheel eventually makes its way onto this agricultural cart right here. I'm interested from this group in knowing how many years do you think it was between that first Stone Age wheel and this wheel being used on the agricultural cart?
Yeah, let's hear some guesses.
Thoughts?
We've got 30 people with us now, Gary. So we're a pretty solid crowd now. We found our way to the chat. We're even quoting generals. We're even quoting generals. So we're good. We're flowing now. So how many years, guys? And we're going to ask a series of these questions. So come on into the chat and let's talk years. Okay. So our guest right now comes from Amy. Hundreds of years. Anybody else have something to say? Let us know. How many years in between the wheel and the horse and buggy? Wheel and horse and buggy. We're still, Gary. We're still very captivated by Sears.
Okay.
So, tough story. Oh my gosh, 3,000 years, 5,000 years, thousands of years. So we've got hundreds and thousands are our guesses.
All right.
Yep.
So I had a man who specialized in prehistoric study who actually told me it was 250,000 years. I don't know that to be true. He told me in an audience.
Goodness.
But it is indeed thousands and thousands of years. And that's a long time to get from the invention of the wheel to this type of use for it. But let's maybe go with something a little bit easier. How long between that horse and buggy and this car? Any ideas on that?
Let's wonder about that. Neil says no idea, so I'd be curious if he has anything to say on this. Anybody have ideas about between the horse and buggy and the car? What's the rate of change on that? Okay, so far we've got a guess of 50 years. Let's see what else. Yeah, 50, 100, 75 maybe, Gary.
Yep, so shorter, right? Would we say
60,
it's a shorter,
yep,
shorter span. So what's the difference between the horse and buggy and the car, and then the car to the plane, and the plane to the rocket? Time keeps collapsing. If you didn't see those slides because I went through them too quickly, let's do it again. The wheel invention to its practical use in agriculture, which sustained economies for hundreds of years, not thousands, to the car even quicker, to the plane even quicker, to the first rockets even quicker. We're talking about the pace of change speeding up. So let's talk about some things that have happened recently that fall into this speed of change. Let me ask you, raise your hand if any of you have ever had a grandmother.
Now we should be finding our hands, guys. Where's your hands? Yeah. Last time we didn't have a question that required a lot of hands. On this one, I hope we're seeing some hands. And, Gary, we are. Yes. Look alive. We're here. We're with you.
Okay.
We got some grandmas.
So, Rochelle, let me ask you a couple questions. Rochelle. Did your grandmother give good advice to you?
Yes, the best.
Would she ever say, or maybe your kid's grandma, would your grandma ever say to you something like, Rochelle, don't ever get into a car with a stranger?
Yep, never, ever. Don't you dare. No.
You can raise your hands out there.
Yes.
You can raise your hands out there if you agree. And then, Rochelle, I'm curious, would your mom ever tell your kids, don't ever meet anybody on the internet? You don't know who they are. It's dangerous.
Scary. Yes.
Yep. Moms, dads, aunts and uncles, big brothers and sisters out there, is that something you would say to a younger person or a friend that you love? Don't ever meet anybody on the internet alone. Don't do it. Here's the thing about Grandma. Rochelle, here's the thing about Grandma. Grandma is now meeting strangers on the internet and getting in their car. It's called Uber.
Uber. Wow.
So Grandma has said, forget about everything we knew in the past. We're going to break some rules. I'm going to meet a stranger on the internet, and I'm going to get in his or her car, and I'm going to let them take me somewhere.
Drive me. Yep.
Drive me. What did Uber do? Uber recognized transportation isn't new. Point A to point B in a paid service isn't new. What they recognized is that the customer said, Grandma said, I don't want to stand in the rain and try to hail a cab. I don't want you to drive a further distance to my location just so you can charge me more money. I don't want to have to fumble in my bag to find a credit card or cash and spend another 5 minutes when I'm already late to pick up Grandpa. I don't want to do any of those things. And Uber recognized that. And Uber said very quickly, in the pace of change, we're going to do something different. But what had happened is, between rickshaws and piggyback rides and taxi cabs, this idea of paid transportation through a third party has been happening since the beginning of time. But very quickly, it's been changed, and it keeps modifying right now. It's an entire industry. And that industry is making changes every day because Grandma is now the Uber driver. They said we have to find a flexible workforce, an on-demand workforce, and be able to call them 24 hours a day around the planet. How do you hire for that? You know how you hire for that? You think about grandma. You think about workforces that you wouldn't normally hire in a full-time 9 to 5, 8 to 10, whatever it is job, come punch in. So the pace of change is not only how they're revolutionizing transportation, it's how they're revolutionizing the use of a largely flexible workforce, predominantly flexible workforce. We think about disruptors oftentimes, and we have visions of these two guys and two ladies in a basement with a laptop and a bunch of inventory, and they're coming after us. That was that first definition I shared with you that said these new entrants to the marketplace. These are the people that we picture as evil, and we say we have little to no control over them. But it's not just these people that are disruptors. And it's not just these people, these brands that you've gotten used to, like Airbnb and Uber and Warby Parker and Tesla, these big companies that you've gotten used to, it's not just them. Tell me who you think are some of the established companies that have also disrupted, those companies that have been around as long as you have, 20, 50, 100 years, who are still able to disrupt. Rochelle, does our audience have any ideas about who they are?
That is a great question to ask them. So, because we've got a very wise audience with us today. So, when you think about established companies that may be disrupting, what comes to mind? Come into the chat and let us know what you think in terms of established companies that are disrupting, not ones that came in as disruptors, but established companies that kind of turn the tide. Okay, so we're flowing now, Gary. Virgin Airlines, Apple is an example. That's Corey and Christine coming in to tell us some things. Who else? Anybody have an idea? 3M? Good. Thank you, Erica.
Awesome. Oh, these are great answers,
yep.
And all ones that I want to
there's Nintendo from Gretchen. Interesting.
Awesome. Okay, we're going to even talk about Nintendo today. So I was going to say I got more information for case studies to look at, but one of them already chimed in. So let's just look at what we mean by disruption, and we'll highlight some of those companies. So I've got a picture of the Frappuccino and the Egg McMuffin. For me, it's the perfect summertime breakfast. It's awesome, that combination. Interestingly enough, though, the Frappuccino didn't come around for a long time. If you look on Starbucks' website, the story goes something like this. There's a manager managing a store and realizes that their sales in that store are down in the warmer months. And from home brings his personal blender in and starts to experiment with ingredients that are already there. And eventually brings that to his regional manager and says, look at this. I'm selling this like crazy. People are buying this. There was a disruption or an innovation within an existing company that came from the front line, and managers brought it up. And the Egg McMuffin is very similar. In this case, it was a franchisee who was required in the location to supply breakfast. And so you had this breakfast innovation from many years ago. That's interesting. What's more interesting in more recent years is that McDonald's announcement of breakfast anytime disrupted the entire fast food marketplace and was largely responsible for their surge in profit and stock price. So a disruption once years ago, a disruption twice when they figured out they could actually serve this thing all day long.
All day.
Both of those, all of those ideas stem from the front line. And so there are many companies that continue to disrupt, and I'm about to share the secrets with you, and largely you'll get to understand that that disruption comes from within. So what are those companies doing differently? Those companies who say, hey, let's stick our coffee in a blender and make Frappuccino, or those companies who say, hey, what if we put a wheel on this luggage and put bellhops out of business and have everybody buying new pieces of luggage across the world? What are the keys? So this takes us right now to the 3 keys to being a disruptor. This is where you may want to take out your notepad. The first key is that they are purpose obsessed. All disruptors have a purpose and are obsessed with it. The second is they all have an entrepreneurial culture, one that will allow that Frappuccino or Egg McMuffin to elevate, and we'll talk about that some more. And the third, of course, is they're able to deliver a unique customer experience because they know that customer experience oftentimes is their biggest differentiator. Purpose obsessed, entrepreneurial culture, and unique customer experience. And I'm going to dive into all three of these with you today in the form of two stories. We call them case studies, but we're going to do a little storytelling.
Storytelling.
So, how many people remember traditional film photography out there? Raise your hands.
Yep, let's see some hands. Anybody remember taking the film, putting it in the camera, taking all your pictures, taking it out? Yes, yes, Yeah, Zach says he remembers. Mackenzie knows. Yes, Jenny knows. Ivy. Oh, yeah. Quite a few of us remember that, Gary. Yeah. What do you think?
I always think I'm the oldest one in the room. I'm the only one who remembers it. I'm glad to see there's others. Good. Well, Kodak obviously was in that business of film for a long time, but they had a purpose. They had a strong purpose statement that said, share moments, share life.
Wow.
And on those pieces of film were life's moments, and they were certainly shareable. Does anybody know what this is? What's this a picture of?
Yep, in the chat. Tell us if you know. Do you recognize this? What might that be? Anybody have a guess? Maybe it's a tape recorder, because you see that little cassette. I see that.
Yes.
Is it a projector?
Yeah.
Good guesses. Yeah.
Yep. Great guesses. It's a part of all those. To me, it looks like part slide projector, part tape recorder, and part circuit board all smashed together. Mm-hmm. And what it is the world's first digital camera.
Wow.
Digital photography. And who do you think invented that? Oh, my goodness, missed a slide. Who do you think invented that? Who invented that was this young gentleman, Steve Sassone, very young, recent college graduate, employee of this company called Kodak.
Yep, Erica got it.
Yes, thank you, Erica. Don't give it all away, okay?
Yep.
So Steve invents this in Kodak, and what do you think Steve's manager said to him when he said, hey, look, I've had some extra time, and I put together some glue and spit and paste and a crayon, and look at what I came up with. It's a digital camera. What do you think his boss said?
Yay.
His boss said, hey, Steve, you wish, right? Steve's boss said, that's great. Get back to work. I mean, obviously, we're going to patent this because it's an interesting toy, but this isn't our business, Steve. Get back to work. Mm-hmm. So let me ask you a question. Can you capture life's moments digitally? Raise your hand if you're capturing life's moments digitally every day.
Yeah. Without film, are we still able to do this, guys? Come on. You bet. Yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
Hands are up,
so
absolutely.
Were they purpose-obsessed at Kodak, or, Rochelle, were they obsessed with selling film?
Yeah. Wow.
Steven invented a product that did not use film. Mm-hmm. So Kodak failed to ask themselves this question. And ladies and gentlemen, on our chat, in our webinar today, I want you to ask yourself this question every day and ask the other leaders in your business. What is our purpose, and what are we willing to throw away to remain true to it? What is our purpose, and what are we willing to throw away to remain true to it? Because if Kodak had asked themselves that question, they would have said, sharing life's moments is our purpose, and we're willing to throw away the film business to remain true to it. So let's talk about entrepreneurial culture for a second. We understand the purpose piece, but we have to create an entrepreneurial culture from leaders to the front line. Because what we saw was Steven's leader said to him, that's not your job.
Yeah,
we sell film. But the Starbucks regional manager said, this is really neat. Unit manager, I think we can learn from this. McDonald's said, this is cool. What if we did this everywhere? We would be the first fast food restaurant to serve breakfast nationwide, internationally, consistently. It's a big deal. And then we get to this unique customer experience piece in Kodak, and we say, okay, well, was Kodak asking themselves how they could deliver it? Did they put themselves in the seat to say, what does the customer want, like Uber did? Did they literally get into the customer's head and say, what does the customer want and expect from us? Is this a unique customer experience? I don't know if any of you are as old as I am, but I remember my mom, certainly in the 60s and 70s, driving in Pompton Lakes, New Jersey to the Grand Union grocery store parking lot to that photo mat and dropping off the film. But here's what had to happen. We had to use the whole roll first. Oh, my goodness. We had to use the whole roll. Sometimes that took days, but sometimes it took months. Then you had to get it out of the camera, bring it to this little Photoshop, wait online, and then they would tell you a week from now, you can come back and pick up your pictures. I want to emphasize that. You can come back in a week and pick up your pictures. What the customer is really saying was, we wanted a new and different method for delivering. We want a new and different method for experiencing it. In fact, we want control. They're my pictures. I want them now, and I want to be able to do stuff with them, like access them, personalize them, and for heaven's sakes, have the empowerment to customize these pictures. I want to make them mine. I'd say this is a new little ridiculous story that I have for you, is that a couple of weeks ago, my wife and I were out on our boat with some friends, and we're sitting in front of the boat dock, and our friends take a picture of us, and it's this great picture. It's a great picture. And as you get into your mid-50s, great pictures become more difficult, Rochelle. And so the great picture was of the face, but boy, I did not want to see my stomach hanging out like that. It was just, I didn't want that. Imagine years ago I would take that picture and wait online at a drugstore or a photomat and say, could you crop out my stomach and just focus on my wife and my spaces? Could you do that after I waited for the film to come back? That's not it. We want to, in the moment, take that picture, modify it, crop it ourselves. It's not a big deal, and be able to then share it and share moments the way we want to share them. Kodak was in a world where they said, go ahead and share those moments, whether it's you on the boat, Gary, or pictures of the grandkids, go on and share them. Take the pictures, put them in an envelope, and mail them. Well, Grandma and Grandpa and all of our friends and relatives still want to share life's moments. They just want to share them like this, instantly. Kodak was not imagining the future, and interestingly enough, that future disruption was under their nose the entire time. But instead of inhaling, they sneezed. They blew it away.
They did.
They did.
Sad.
And so some of you out there may be saying, Kodak is a Fortune 50 company. If they couldn't do it, why should I bother? I mean, is it even possible to do this? What's my role in this? Can I do it? So, Rochelle, we're going to change the tone here, and we're going to move to something really positive, and a positive story about how disruption can happen with an existing company and what to do. But first, I thought you might just want to check in with our guests and make sure they're okay.
Yeah, we're tracking pretty well with you, Gary. Thank you so much for the examples, and I think you're right. This is a time for shift in energy because many of us work for companies that have been around for a really long time, and we want to know what's possible.
We do. So we need your participation again right here, starting right now. And
stays open.
Let me ask you, interactive entertainment is the purpose statement of what company?
Yep. Who has this as a purpose statement, guys? Anybody have a guess? Interactive entertainment is our purpose. Who would that be? It's okay to guess. There's there's no prizes or anything. We're just having fun here. Okay, maybe
somebody already gave us the answer.
That could be Xbox. It could be Netflix. It could be Sony, and so Nintendo. And somebody mentioned Nintendo earlier. Sarah says EA. I don't even know what EA is. Yep.
These are all fantastic answers.
It could make sense.
Actually, it is Nintendo. So the next question I have for you is, what decade did Nintendo come around?
Yeah, when was Nintendo established? Yeah, we'll give you a 10-year range.
When were they established?
70s, 1970s is what we've got. 60s, 1960s, 1970s, 1980s, 80s, 70s.
80s?
Yep.
Well, whoever's saying 80s, you all have got that 80s piece down because it is certainly the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at your screen, you'll see it is the 1880s. Bam!
That was not a guess.
1889.
Wow.
1889, Nintendo comes around with the purpose of interactive entertainment, and they say interactive entertainment, what's really disruptive and innovative in 1889, everyone, is playing cards. Imagine that. It's Friday night, and your friend says to you, do you and your significant other want to come over and do playing cards with us? And you go, oh, that's so scandalous. I don't know if we can do that. How will I ever wrap my head around this? Well, that's what disruption looked like. And it wasn't your regular kings, queens, jacks. This was serious games using playing cards. Well, interactive entertainment clearly changed for them because they were able to evolve. And you see this sort of home arcade from the 80s and 70s that you were all referencing as really relevant then. And obviously, even their place with Wii today. Interactive entertainment is absolutely their purpose, and they're obsessed with it at Nintendo. And if you look at the timeline, those playing cards from 1889 to 1959, those 70 years, sustained them and sustained them beautifully, very well. It worked. There was no real need to change during that time. But when the 50s hit and board games became popular, and the 70s came and Pac-Man at the local pub became popular, or arcade games, and then in the 80s, home arcade games, and then late 80s to the 2000s, the handheld arcade game, and we can keep going to the Wii, to Switch, all the way through. They were able to evolve, and I think one of my favorite examples is that Nintendo is involved in the IP, the intellectual property of Pokemon Go. So if you think about that, you've gone from interactive playing cards to adults and children running around parks at 10 o'clock at night looking for cartoon characters on their handheld. That's how they were able to transform themselves from playing cards to the current state using one purpose statement. This is what it looks like today. Wii, Pokemon Go, and many more, just revolutionizing the world of entertainment. So let's take a look at Nintendo. Founded in 1889, they're at a $42.32 million market value. Yeah, billion, sorry.
Yeah.
$42.32 billion market value when Sears is at $1.3 billion. I mean, where do you want to hitch your wagon when, if you look at this next screen, they've got $1.7 billion in profits, and Sears has a negative 558. They are the same age, essentially. They are 7 years apart on their birthdays. Why haven't they evolved the same way? Well, they didn't evolve the same way because they didn't embrace the three keys to disruption. They didn't remain at Sears, purpose obsessed, or at Kodak or Sears or any of those companies, purpose obsessed at all. They weren't creating an entrepreneurial culture, and they for sure weren't delivering a unique or differentiated customer experience. And so in the areas of success, there is a company that really stands out by the name of Hampton, and it's Hampton by Hilton. And Meredith Bellman, who is a longtime friend and colleague of ours at Root, is really responsible for helping the Hampton team to evolve to where they are today and to change. So I'm going to ask Meredith to join us now and to take over the slides and give us the story about how Hampton is using these three secrets to stay relevant in today's marketplace.
Wonderful.
Hi,
thank you so much. Hi, Rochelle.
Meredith.
How are you? Hi, Gary. How are you?
Thanks for joining us.
Awesome.
Thanks
you.
for having me. So Gary gets his photo, and just so you know, I just learned last week I am the one and only person in our company who has an avatar. So
awesome.
And by the way, in real life, Meredith looks exactly like this, but sometimes she changes her shirt from the green one to a red one. Otherwise, it's exactly the same.
Only once in a while, but yes, every occasionally I do. So know the gravity of the expertise here. So I'm going to talk through the Hampton story, and let's begin with who has stayed at a Hampton. Raise your hand.
Yeah, let's see, Meredith. Who do we know that can relate to this? We're going to have some hands up for you here soon, I'm sure. Okay, we're doing pretty good here. We have a handful. We have Corey and Erica has, Gretchen and Jessica, Julie has, Mackenzie, Nelson and Zach. So a handful of us have. We know Hilton.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, thank you all for my job security as we've continued working with Hampton. So I'm going to take us through a case study. Really, I'm going to take us through about 10 years in about 7 minutes. So let's begin by talking about going back to around 2004. Hampton was at a crossroads. They were about 20 years old, and they were a disruptor when they first came into the hospitality industry, essentially creating an entire category that we now call mid-scale that was really focused around the basics that travelers need, but providing them with quality, consistency, and value. And that held up for about 20 years. But as Hampton looked out, realized that competitors were starting to bridge the gap. And they were no longer really disrupting things the way they had in the past. So they needed to figure out how to take themselves into the next chapter. So they instituted about 127 product changes.
Wow.
And this in and of itself is a complicated story that I won't get into now because they're a franchise organization. So just the process of that was also a giant disruption that there's a lot to learn from. But these 127 product changes, so we can raise your hands again if you've ever experienced being in a hotel shower and the shower curtain has touched you.
Yeah. Have y'all ever had that? Doesn't matter if you were at a Hampton or not. Anybody have that shower curtain touch you? Oh, yeah. Many of us. Meredith. Oh, dear. And Gretchen says yuck. She says yuck. Yeah, go ahead with your question. Yeah.
Yeah, if you want to put into the chat a word that comes to your mind when that happens, yuck probably.
Thanks for getting us started. Gretchen says yuck. What else you guys thinking? Shower curtain touches you in a hotel room where other people have stayed. Your body. What do you think? Is that good? Oh, no. Beth got very specific.
Oh, wow. Yes, you did. I've never heard that one before. Well, you can thank Hampton for any time now since then you've stayed in a hotel room and seen the curved shower rod, because it was at this time in the 127 product changes that Hampton invented that curved shower rod. So that, again, in itself is a huge thing for all of us. In addition, that's when they came out with waffles, irons, and ironing boards in every room. So it's hard to believe, but before this, I guess we all walked around dirty from shower curtains and with wrinkled pants. So here's the trick. So within, a few months or a year of instituting all these product changes, which definitely gave them a bump, their competitors, what do you think happened? They had curved shower rods and ironing boards. So Hampton needed to come up with a different way to differentiate themselves and really to disrupt the market again. So the key there is to differentiate through people. And that has carried Hampton through the past 10 years in really continuing to be an industry leader and a disruptor in the hospitality marketplace. And where it's important here also is they realize differentiating through their people, and you'll see this as I talk through the rest of the story, is their method of maintaining that disruption and continuing to be able to do it and activate on those three keys that Gary's been talking about. So Hampton really put a stake in the ground at this time and put a name on their culture and on their service and what it meant and what it means to work for Hampton and be a Hampton team member. And they call it Hamptonality. We still call it Hamptonality to this day. All the training materials, communications, the way we talk to team members is Hamptonality. And really, we don't define it. It's really their authentic personality. But this is Hampton's way of saying we are using our stuff plus our staff to disrupt the model that exists today. So let's just take a look now at how they use their people and their products, really in those three keys that Gary's been talking about. So if we start with purpose, this is Hampton's purpose. We focus on the little things that make a big difference to create memorable experiences worth sharing. And this purpose has been communicated through the company from the very top to the housekeepers who are cleaning rooms. And because the beauty of this purpose, I believe, is that anyone can do a little thing that makes a big difference, no matter what role you're in. And so as they continually communicate it and talk about it in a way that also makes sense to all team members, people feel that they are a part of this purpose and really can contribute to it. And then Hampton doubled down and made an investment also in helping their team members develop their own personal purpose. And so you see a couple sampling of those on the screen right now. And the trick of this was to help them develop their personal purpose and then connect it to that little thing, to the Hampton's purpose of doing the little things that create a big difference. And we've done conferences and different kinds of materials, huddles, workshops, different communication methods, all with Hamptonality. So you can see we've connected really Hamptonality and purpose to help bring this to life every day, every guest, every stay, every team member. So the next one Gary's talked about then is entrepreneurial culture. And as I said, Hampton really has believed and activated on stuff plus staff equals disruption. And so they took Hamptonality and then doubled down on it by saying not only Hamptonality is our service, but we're going to put out a rally cry, Hamptonality starts with me. And so for every team member who works in Hampton, this is a rally cry for them and a way of saying you are empowered to create the guest experience that we have promised to them in our advertising and in our marketing, and to do what it takes to make that guest happy. Now, what's interesting, another kind of chapter in this story, in 2016, so I'll go back to 1989 for just 1 second. Hampton instituted the satisfaction guarantee, which was the first in the industry to say if you aren't satisfied, if you didn't get a clean room, a few different things, then tell the front desk and we'll refund your money. That was great, and that definitely held them for a few years. But in 2016, they instituted a new guarantee called the happiness guarantee. So you can put it in the chat or just think to yourself, when you think about the experiences you want in your life, do you want to be satisfied or do you want to be happy?
What's your preference,
and so that's our hand.
Yep. Do you want to know, Meredith?
Michelle.
Do you want? Yeah.
I do want to know. I feel like I know the answer, but I do want to know.
Yeah, it seems like a rhetorical question, but it'd be interesting to see. Do you guys think satisfied or happy? Yeah, we agree. Happy.
Awesome.
Thank you, Meredith.
So we agree too, and Hampton agrees too. And so they instituted a new guarantee that said, if you aren't happy, talk to any one of our team members, and we'll do what it takes to make you happy. And the beginning of that guarantee is making you happy makes us happy. And this is a team member next to when you first walk into a few Hamptons, this is on the wall. And this is a team member showing she believes in this and she will do what it takes to make you happy. And so they formalized this with a new guarantee. This is the stamp at the bottom of the screen you see. And then rolled it out across all their hotels. So used one of the route learning maps. We created a series of e-learning and all kinds of different materials. We actually had their last conference in 2016 was the Happiness Huddle. And it was all about how, making you happy makes us happy. How do we make each other happy? And we've translated it into 8 or 9 languages all over the world. Any team member is empowered to do what it takes to make guests happy. And I believe that's their method of disrupting and really having that entrepreneurial culture of inventing what it takes to give the right guest service and bring Hamptonality to every guest. So the third one then is the unique customer experience. And I think, honestly, all the things I've talked about really contribute to the unique customer experience that Hampton activates for guests every day. But it's interesting where they are now with digital being more important and different kinds of technologies, using your phone as your room key, checking in on your phone, all those kinds of things. They are in the process right now of thinking through, okay, what's our next disruption in the customer experience? And so we've been fortunate to work with them on what you see here are all the different guest touch points and thinking through, okay, what do these look like? How do we ensure that we're creating the Hamptonality guest experience at every single touch point a guest has, from the beginning when they reserve to when they enter, all the way through when they check out and when they've already left our doors. And so Hampton is really activating and has activated on the 3 keys that Gary talked about. And I think that's that's why it's a great story to really show how disruption is not only just a moment in time, but has to be really part of how you operate as a company and can help you last at the top of your industry.
So, Meredith, a question came through that I wanted to give you a chance to weigh in on before we hand it back over to Gary, and that's this idea that we're differentiating through our people, but a lot of the interaction these days, you're right, is digital and mobile. So how did you see the people at Hampton reconcile that we're driving people to web and digital interaction, and yet people are our differentiator?
So I think in 2 ways. One is, first of all, those digital interactions still have to represent the customer experience. So they still need to have hospitality when they are using the app or checking in. So the product still has to back it up, and the digital experience still has to give you that unique and your branded customer experience. In person, what it means now is that we have different kinds of interactions with guests. So it may not be your traditional walking into the front desk checking in, but can it be a team member who's just standing in the lobby welcoming you to just smile and say hello?
Good.
Or if we do have an interaction, it's got to be more intentional now, because that means someone is purposely having a touch point and a personal, person-to-person contact with a team member. So it still has to come to life on those 2 levels.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you for the question, Jean.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great. Great question. So with that, Rochelle, if there aren't any other questions, Gary, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Meredith.
Thank
Meredith,
you.
I always love hearing you and this story specifically, so thank you. I know you're really busy today. Thank you for joining and sharing with us.
Thank you, Gary.
Would you
I'm
mind
going to give you the ball back. Yep.
Okay.
There you go.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. So I think one of the best things about the Hampton story is that they were a bright, shining star in hospitality that lost their luster and were able to regain it through disruption. And they became the leader that everybody else started to follow in their segment and beyond. What they recognized is that disruption is key to survival, as many other companies that have been around for generations have learned. And what's important in the Hampton story and in the Starbucks story and in the Nintendo story is that these companies recognize that everyone is involved. Disruption is key, and everyone is involved. It's not just the leaders locked in a room saying, what do we need to do differently? We have to listen to the organization. So my question to all of you is, what will you do to disrupt the marketplace, your company, your team, or department? What will you do to disrupt? I'll leave that as rhetorical because I don't want to pressure anybody, but if you have any thoughts, you're welcome to chime in. But that's really what I'd like to leave you with today. If we know that disruption is key to survival, and we know if we start right from the beginning and say, you are a change agent because you decided to join this call, what will you do to disrupt your business? And with that question, I want to thank you and also let you know that we have a takeaway for you that you'll be able to get and access that will allow you to go through an experience that plans for disruption in your business, something that you can use with your team or the leaders in your business to actually take a look at the current state of your business and design what disruption looks like. And Rochelle, I'm hoping you can tell people how they can access that.
Yeah, so I put a link in the chat, and when Gary asked the question, what will you do, the takeaway is going to help you. So it's going to go through the points that we've made today and then give you the space to think through. So I would encourage you to go do that and take the next step. You joined us for a reason today. There was something that you were seeking. Hopefully you have found it, and you will be ready to take action on it. And we've enjoyed our time together, and hope that we get to work with you guys soon.
Yeah. And I will leave you with, change starts here with you today. We wish you the best of luck. If we can help, please let us know. Thank you so much for joining us.